Welcome to the Integrated Schools Podcast. I'm Andrew, a white dad from Denver, and I have the podcast to myself this week. Thanksgiving was just last week, and full disclosure, we've been, a little bit surprised by just how much work actually making a podcast is. So we decided to take this week off. Well, mostly off. We are still working on some great episodes, but this week, I just want to take a couple minutes to update everyone on all the other stuff going on at Integrated Schools. Because, beyond this podcast, Integrated Schools has a bunch of other projects. And for an all-volunteer organization, I have to say, I think it's pretty impressive. So, first of all, Integrated Schools has local chapters. They're all over the country. They're local groups run by one or maybe a handful of volunteers. Some are just small groups of people talking. Others are actively organizing across whole cities. All of them are run by parents who really care about this issue. Then we have the two-tour pledge. You may have heard us mention this back in episode 4, but it's one of the things we've been doing since really the early days of Integrated Schools. And, the basic idea is you take a pledge to tour at least 2 schools that are not on most white people's sort of spreadsheet of possible schools. This would usually be global majority schools. Once you sign up for the 2-tour pledge, we've got some resources that we'll send you, help you think about, what sort of things to ask on your tours, and also what sort of things to ask at the privileged, quote unquote good schools you might be touring as well. You're not pledging to send your kid to the school, but you're pledging to go there, set foot in the building, and while you're there, to find 2 good things about it, and then tell 2 of your friends about those good things. One of the first steps to changing the narrative around how we talk about schools is to actually see the quote-unquote bad schools, and then to tell people about the good things happening in them. It's a way to leverage your social capital for the greater good, and you might be surprised by what you see. And speaking of the narrative, we've often referred to that here as the smog. Well, we've just completed a video, and it's very cool. It's sort of our attempt at mapping how white and underprivileged families interact with school integration. It's about 7 minutes long, and it shows you what we believe could happen, what often does happen with parents opting into global majority schools. And it also shows how things can go wrong sometimes. We're working on making an interactive version of it, but in the meantime, it's a quick watch, and I think it's a great entry point to many of these conversations. So there's a link to it in the show notes. Check it out. Let us know what you think of it. Share it. It's pretty cool. And, if all of this leads you to consider enrolling your kid in an integrating school, we have a parent-to-parent program. So there's an opportunity for parents considering or just beginning in an integrating school to connect with a parent who has been there, who's done that. It's a one-to-one connection to provide you with someone to talk to, someone to bounce ideas off of, and to reassure you that you're doing the right thing, even if you aren't always doing it right, and to hopefully help you avoid making some of the mistakes that many of us made along the way. So those are really the major projects going on at Integrated Schools. There's a bunch of other stuff that we do. We've got an online book club. We're working on a refresh of our website at the moment. We have a How Not to Be a Colonizer resource in the works. And of course, many more episodes of this podcast on the way. So if you want to get involved, links to everything are in the show notes, or just go to our website, integratedschools.org. And as always, if there are things you want to hear us address on this podcast, resources you think would be helpful, let us know. hello@integratedschools.org or at Integrated Schools on Twitter or Facebook. This is all volunteer work, and the work is substantial. So, in this season of giving, if you appreciate the work we're doing, if you have found the resources useful, if you've enjoyed this podcast, if you've enjoyed connecting with like-minded people through our Facebook group, through our book clubs, please consider supporting us financially. Website hosting, podcast hosting, event planning, all of this costs money. You can find a link on our website, and you know what? Every little bit helps, so thank you. Before I sign off, a couple of shout outs to my lovely co-host, Courtney, who also is the founder of Integrated Schools. Thank you for all your work on this. Denise, who you heard in episode 4, has been a huge help in thinking behind the scenes about how this podcast should work, what it's doing well, what it's not doing well. So thank you, Denise. Thank you to Kevin Casey, as always, for our music. And thank you to all of the volunteers who work on behalf of Integrated Schools, local chapters, parent board, all of you. It's a lot of work, and we couldn't do it without you. And I guess most importantly, thank you to all of you for listening, for talking, for sending us feedback, for being willing to engage in these topics. These aren't easy conversations, but we think they're important conversations, and we're thankful to you for being willing to engage with them, for being willing to tell us what you think about them. So keep the comments coming, and we'll see you next week.